While people are still trying to resume their normal lives after the July floods, there was a sudden rainstorm on the night of August 12th in Gongyi City.Henan Province. In the early morning of the 13th, Liquan village and Zhuangtou village were hit by floods again. The live video sent by the villagers shows that the roads were flooded, the cars were soaked in the water, and some were even washed into a ditch and then smashed. The roadbed of Touzhuang village was washed away, and forklifts were overturned. The sewer in the village also broke down. Utility poles were washed away, causing power outages throughout the village. Some people riding motorcycles with people on the back were almost swept away by the floods. The flood also triggered a landslide, which caused the collapse of houses and other damages. 43 villagers from 24 households in Liquan village were trapped on an island for a few hours and then finally rescued. The floodwaters have now receded, but the mud carried by the flood filled the roads and villagers' homes. Roads were cut off by the flood, making it extremely difficult to rescue them after the disaster. In addition, located in the vicinity of the Dailuo Reservoir, Wuluo village and Shibangguo village were also seriously affected by heavy rains and flood discharge from the reservoir. The power supply lines of the two villages were interrupted, resulting in the temporary suspension of water supply to the Wuluo water plant and the Shibangguo pumping station, which left the nearby villages and towns without water or electricity. The city of Gongyi was one of the more severely affected areas in the July 20th flood. Due to the ineffective government rescue efforts, some villagers' homes were still soaked in more than 1 meter of water, and many houses are basically completely destroyed. The local villagers said the village has no running water. The villagers can only find other ways to find water to drink, such as going to the nearby abandoned wells. But there is a lot of green moss inside, and the water quality is very poor. The government only gave each family a little bit of water, as well as instant noodles to eat, which soon ran out. Many helpless villagers had to turn to their relatives and friends and find their own solutions to their difficulties. After the flood, there was another outbreak of the Delta virus in Henan Province. In order to prevent the spread of the virus, the authorities strictly restricted the villagers from going out, making the people suffer a lot. The floods again added to the misery of the villagers. In fact, it is not just Gongyi City, but Hua County and Xun County, which are located in the floods discharging areas of last month's floods. Recently, there have been reports of government inaction. The victims were not properly resettled, and the people are still suffering. The Shunbei Wanfu Agricultural Trade Wholesale Market in Huaxian County was also hit by the flood. The day before the flood, the government notified people to evacuate, but did not notify the merchants to relocate their goods. The flood was discharged the next day, causing all the goods to be destroyed. Those who were slow to evacuate were arrested and taken to the police station, so there was no time for the merchants to move their goods. After the official flood discharge, in the face of hundreds of millions of losses, no rescue efforts were carried out, and merchants were forbidden to save their own products. To this day, the government still ignores the flooding. There is no cleanup efforts and no electricity provided, and the merchants can only watch the goods rot. The merchants went to the market management and the county government to find a solution, but were told that a higher-level department needed to appraise the loss first. But no one came to handle it. The entire market reeks, and no one is cleaning it up, and there is no disinfection either. Because they have to wait for the appraisal department to check it out, the merchants cannot clean it up by themselves. If this continues, the merchants will suffer even greater losses. And it is said that the compensation standards in force are still the standards stipulated in 2000. In the face of rapidly rising prices, compensation that merchants can get may be minimal compared to their losses. Now let's take a look at the situation in Xun County. The city of Hebi in Henan was hit by a flood at the end of July, and the water level of the Wei River rose rapidly, making the town of Wangzhuang in Xun County one of the major flooded areas. In order to preserve the two counties, 76,000 people in the town were evacuated in an emergency, and 80 to 90% of the area in Wangzhuang was inundated. From the night of July 28th to August 7th, the victims lived in the resettlement site for 9 days. However, as the outbreak of the Delta virus spread to Henan Province, the authorities disbanded all the resettlement sites in Xun County in order to prevent the spread of the epidemic in the resettlement sites. The authorities did not have a new resettlement plan and sent the villagers directly by bus to the intersection of Wangzhuang town government and left them alone. The villagers then returned to the village and found that there was still a lot of water on the roads, with the water level up to their calves. There is still no clean water or electricity in the village, and their homes were like islands in the ocean. They had to walk home through very dirty water, only to find that everything's underwater anyways. At that time, the local government gave temporary notice to evacuate. The villagers did not prepare anything when they left, and could only bring a few pieces of clothing. They thought that the flood would soon pass and they could go home, but didn't expect the flood to be so severe and that their homes would be entirely flooded. And now the government is not organizing anyone to clean up the sewage nor helping the victims. The helpless victims can only rely on friends and family to solve the problem themselves. Some villagers saw a large truck full of relief supplies, but the government did not distribute them. A villager said, whether it's supplies or government subsidies, they don't reach the people directly. After passing them from one governmental level to another, there's barely anything left for the people in the end. The current situation of the victims in Henan is really heartbreaking, and the same disaster is happening in Hubei province as well. From August 11th to the morning of August 12th, many places in Hubei suffered heavy rains, with local rainfall exceeding 400 millimeters. Among them, Liulian town in Zhuangtou was flooded, with a water depth of more than 3.5 meters. According to mainland media reports, it started raining in Liulian Township at 8 p.m. on August 11th. The water level rose suddenly at about 4 a.m. on the 12th and overwhelmed Liulian Township. The water has risen by more than 2 meters, and the first floors of many residents and businesses were completely submerged. As it was nighttime, people were still asleep and did not notice the flood. The authorities only sent a few people to shout and try to alert the villagers, but many people had their doors closed and could not hear the shouts, so they drowned in their houses. However, some local residents also mentioned that the water rose all at once, so there was no chance for the people to escape. The Chinese state media, CCTV, reported that the average depth of water in the town of Liulian reached 3.5 meters, with the deepest point reaching 5 meters. Then came the news that as of the evening of the 12th, 141 reservoirs in the city of Zhuangtou exceeded their normal storage level and are overflowing, and small reservoirs are in danger, so discharging is needed to ensure the safety of the reservoirs. Currently, 774 reservoirs in Hubei province exceeds their flood warning levels. Hubei Emergency Management Department reported that as of 6 p.m. on August 13th, 1 million people in 43 counties and 12 cities in the province were affected. More than 3,600 houses and 8,110 hectares of crops were damaged, leading to a direct economic loss of 50 million RMB, equivalent to around $7.7 million US. In Liulian town alone, more than 8,000 people were affected. 24 people died and 4 are missing.